And it is time to go lights out with the one and only Chris Myers. Chris, it is so great to see you, man. Been way too long, but watch you on the tube Sundays when we can. How are things going, man?
Things are great. But a fun football season, and still keeping a close watch on obviously the way NASCAR unfolded. Exciting for Joey Logano, and congratulations to Ford and Team Penske. But it was a crazy situation there. But yeah, looking forward to the finish of the NFL season. Super Bowl, of course, on Fox. And we got the Clash at Bowman Gray, and then we got the Daytona 500, and right after the Super Bowl is the Westminster Kennel Club Dog Show. That we do live from New York on Madison Square Garden, where Best in Show is crowned. So yeah, staying busy, and things are going good.
Yeah, which actually, Chris, I'm glad you mentioned that because I am a crazy dog lover. I think you know that. That's got to
Yes.
be, is that one of the coolest assignments or one of the most unique assignments you've ever had, the Westminster?
Yeah, it's a once a year event. We use Super Bowl as a framing for big events. Super Bowl of racing, Super Bowl of basketball, whatever, Super Bowl of dog shows. And this really is the one. There's a lot of different kind of dog shows, but this is the oldest. In fact, it's the oldest running competition in the U.S. after the Kentucky Derby for any kind of event like this, or sporting event, if you want to call it that. But I'm fascinated by the people and the time they spend. And then, of course, the dogs are the show. We really, we don't have to talk that much. They give me an analyst like they would with football or NASCAR or baseball, and then I let them talk about the specifics of it. But I just say what I see in a dog. Having grown up with a dog in the family, my wife's son do a lot with rescue animal dogs, spend a lot of time in that area. But obviously this is purebred and the, fitting the standard. There's some specific rules, but it's a really, and I'm trying to, we keep the cameras on for the time, but it's always in between what's going on. The dogs are doing their own thing with their owners or handlers, and that's really fascinating. And it is like a lot like the movie, the comedy Best in Show. There's a lot of similarities there. I try to keep it fun without offending anybody. But if you've seen that and like that,
Often
you'll like
hard.
the real show. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, so Chris, really exciting news for you, man. The book is out. I remember talking to Joe Gibbs once, and Joe Gibbs said he wanted to write a book, but he wanted to make sure he had something to say. Man, you sure as heck have something to say in this book. Tell us about how the idea came about and really how much fun and how gratifying it is to complete a project like this.
Yeah, and I wanted, I thought I had experienced so many great sporting events. First of all, nothing brings people together like a great sporting event, whether it's the Daytona 500, the Super Bowl, whatever, World Series, communities, and I've covered them, and fans watch on TV, and they sit there and in the stands and support their teams or their drivers, and I wanted to share the experience from the inside out, what it's like to cover that in these situations, and then the unique situations that somehow I've been thrown in. In fact, I said if you took the movie Forrest Gump and the movie Almost Famous, which is about Cameron Crowe, who's a young rock and roll journalist, and you put them together in a sports mold, that's kind of what this book is about. Because I've been at a World Series and a Super Bowl, the broadcast network with Fox, Daytona 500, but then other moments. It's funny, John, that went beyond sports. I mean, there was really news events. I was at the Earthquake World Series covering for ESPN with the A's and the Giants, the Olympic bomb. Of course, Dale Earnhardt at the Daytona 500 in the pre-race, post-race show with our crew when that tragedy took place. And so you have to react in a different way. And part of it's a little bit why I became interested in sports, and especially the people in it, to kind of tell these stories and how you react in these situations. Obviously, happy moments, chasing down Tom Brady, being the network field reporter for his greatest Super Bowl comeback, or the greatest ever in the Super Bowl, and then also the Red Sox breaking through to win the World Series, ending their curse. So many others, and just some unique circumstances. And just if I could, I'll show you the book that's there. And Bill Murray wrote the foreword, who was someone who I've known many, many years. He's a very astute sports fan, and we know who he is as an entertainer. So he had a little fun in writing the foreword. So yeah, that was kind of my, I kept notes for a while, and somebody said, "Hey, we got a lot of stories to tell." I said, "Well, I don't want it to be about me. I've always been taught it's about the game is the thing. When you're interviewing somebody, it's their story. It's about them. So it is about sports and beyond sports, but through kind of my lens, which I hope people find it's all accurate. I hope they're along for the ride. It's emotional. Rick Hendrick wrote a nice thought on that for me in there. We talk about a lot of the highs and lows of people's lives in sports, some tragedy, some triumph, and some of the big names in sports. So I hope people enjoy it. Amazon, you can order it, or Barnes and Noble, or Target. It's at Target, Walmart stores, things like that. But yeah, it was fun to do, actually, because to kind of go back over, all of a sudden I'm like, wow, somebody said to me, you were there and you were there, and I was like, yeah, and I'm still there. So anyway, it's fun.
Yeah, so Chris, you were part of a pretty iconic thing. I think that the height of Sports Center at ESPN was when you were part of it, when every local sportscaster like myself was watching you on ESPN. What was it like to be a part of that energy when Sports Center was at that period, like it was, when it was just so much, it was just all about the games, and it was all about delivering it in a way that we were all watching?
Yeah, and I was one of those local sportscasters too, John, before I got the chance as a West Coast reporter, and then got to do Sports Center and work with people like Mike Tirico and Linda Cohn, Chris Berman, Bob Lee, back in what I call it was through the 90s, what I call the golden age of Sports Center, simply because, of course, they expanded, it became a lot bigger, but they were the only game in town. And that's why I think as local sportscasters, other than the networks who were on just covering CBS, or Fox hadn't even come around till 94. Your sports were limited. This was 24 hours all the time. Some people said, "Oh, it'll never make it." Well, it was very successful, obviously. So yes, it was an honor to get in. It was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of competition, a lot of talented people, and we felt like we were building something at the time. We were part of something special, and we had at that time creative freedom. You wrote your own material. You certainly had guidelines in sports, but it was a little loose in that, hey, we're kind of the new guys, and we're the only game in town, and yeah, I talk about that quite a bit in the book, and everything from whether it's catchphrases or certain other events that happened in and around ESPN, but grateful for a lot of people too behind the scenes, as you know, that it always takes to kind of put on a show.
So, Chris, how difficult was a decision for you to leave ESPN and go to Fox? Because you were, again, in on the ground floor there. That wasn't, if I remember right, it wasn't totally established at the time. Was it a difficult decision?
Yeah, it was, John, because ESPN was gaining traction, had really become, it went from, if you remember Frank Robinson as a manager, when I was in the early years of ESPN, and I said, hey, do you have a moment for ESPN? And he said, what, is that one of those Spanish channels, cable channels? So I was like, no. Then it went from that to like, hey, ESPN, everybody get out of the way. Let's, we want to definitely give them a chance to do an interview. That actually happened. So yes, they were hitting a high point. I felt that when Fox Sports came along, and some of it is geographical, where you live and your family, that type of thing. And I've been doing the up close interview show out in California, have been begging ESPN to build a studio or to have some kind of studio presence out on the West Coast, other than taping that show, to do late sports centers or whatever. And they said, nah, it'll never happen. It's too costly. At least that's what they told me. I wrote proposals. But anyway, Fox comes along and established, they get the NFL, then they get baseball, they're going to get NASCAR. So and they approached me when my contract was coming up, and I really didn't plan on leaving. I thought I'd be at ESPN for decades. And Fox just it was too good an offer and too good an opportunity, I think, to do some of the things, John, and I didn't know at the time, but I had the vision to do them. And Fox was going to at least give me the opportunity to be in line to do them, and that's to be on the network broadcast of the Super Bowl with, Troy Aikman, Joe Buck, and Aaron Andrews or Pam Oliver, depending upon the years. And I did that quite a few, from, being the guy. I interviewed Brady, as I said, Mahomes, when he won his first Super Bowl with Andy Reid and the Chiefs, to have those moments. There were some other, to be covering a World Series on the network broadcast for a series of years. I mentioned the Red Sox, also when the Phillies broke through, when the White Sox won theirs, when the Cardinals, won the World Series. So those were, you could cover those in other ways with other networks, but there's only one that gets to broadcast the game as the network, and the Daytona 500, of course, is being a part of that now, having a full-time run at that with Fox once they reestablished the rights to that. So that, that was kind of like a bit of a gamble. I mean, because again, Fox, the network, eventually you had FS1, and that was established to have a 24-hour sports channel, sports network on the cable side. That was in the works too, and so I believed in that, and I liked the freedom and creativity and the idea of, yeah, you got a job to do, but I want you to have fun and have your personality on it. That was all kind of part of the move, the transition, and I'm thankful I did it. Again, I enjoyed my time at ESPN, but that was a different time. Things have changed. I still stay in touch with people that I worked with back at that time, but I don't know how the place operates now necessarily.
So, Chris, I can't wait to read about your perspective on the day that we're all part of. But on this program, we've talked to several people that were involved in broadcasting on that day in 2001 when we tragically lost Dale Earnhardt. I remember we were sitting in our little studio in Charlotte, and we had you and Jeff Hammond up on it wasn't being broadcast, it was on the satellite backhaul, but we were watching you guys as we all learned that this icon in sports was now lost, and that we were really looking at one of the biggest tragedies in professional sports. What was your take about that day? What do you take away from that?
Yeah, I mean, I still, and you describing it, and when it was hard to write about that, just like my own personal experience in loss of someone close to you, and boy, I mean, you have your TV professional side, and you kick into that mode, which is something I've learned from covering an earthquake when you're there for the World Series, or when you're at the Olympics in Atlanta and a bomb goes off. And so this felt different because it happened it was the face of the sport doing what he does while we're on the air. I mean, obviously it was Darrell Waltrip in the booth, and then Michael Waltrip winning the race, and it's still a little bit of a blur. I got to tell you, the shock, but I felt, and I had interviewed Dale Earnhardt, but I wasn't as close to him as people like Jeff Hammond or Larry McReynolds or some of the people that we were working with, and they knew and they felt right away. And I hurt for them having to experience that in front of, or we weren't on the air, as you said, not yet, but we had to be eventually to report on that. And that was the hard part too. I mean, other than realizing that this was happening, that we couldn't, even though they all felt it and knew it, obviously you have to wait for Mike Helton, NASCAR president, to announce it. The family has to be notified. There's procedures. So even waiting out that time to tell people who all feared the worst, but we're still hopeful. You hate to, you don't want to mislead anybody. But that moment, that stays with you. It was, watching it and the joy. Our first for Fox, the first broadcast of a Daytona 500 on the network, and such a great finish with Darrell Waltrip cheering his brother on in terms of the excitement, and then boom, and then the knowledge, or at least the thought right away, like, okay, is it really that bad? We had seen people walk away from crashes like that before that were not hurt or seriously injured anyway. So it was, it was one of those difficult moments. But I always look back, and he did, died doing what he liked most, and he left his mark beyond making it safer for future drivers, who love to do what they do.
Yeah, no question about that. Chris, on a personal note, I just want to say to you, a huge thank you. For me to get to work with you was kind of like some of these drivers talk about, watching their heroes race, and all of a sudden they're on the racetrack with them. I felt that way when I did broadcast with you. I appreciate the friendship, man. I appreciate the guidance. It was always great to see you, always great to work with you, and I really want to say how great it is to catch up with you, and also a huge thank you for all those times.
Yeah, no, John, it's nice of you to say. You don't have to say that. I know you're a professional. I certainly respect what you do and have done. And I also like the fact that, you enjoy what you do, which is part of how I feel about it. And you're just a good guy. I think if people have never met you, but they're watching, they see you, you're a very approachable, easy to talk to guy. And that's the way it comes through here. And that's the way you are. When you're at the track or when people run into you, and that's something that means a lot to me. So it's been my honor, and I appreciate the kind words. It's a crazy business. Sometimes people get a little too high strung with things, and we're all trying to do our best. But at the end of the day, we're lucky to be in this business and get to work with good people.
Absolutely, Chris, and I love talking to you, man. Hope to talk to you again soon. Great luck with the book, and again, thank you so much for being on the show today, and hope to see you in person real soon, man.
No, okay, anytime. You got it. Thanks, John.